Hello, welcome to Chapter 9, Section 6, where we're going to be solving quadratic equations. And in this chapter, we're going to be solving quadratic equations in 5 different ways. So we can solve by graphing the related quadratic function and finding out where the zeros are. We're going to do what we're going to do. That's a bad way of saying it. In this section, which is solving by factoring. And then later, as we go finish up the chapter, we're going to be solving by using square roots. And when that doesn't work, we can do something called completing the square, and we'll finish with the quadratic formula. This isn't going to seem this way at first, but to be honest, factoring is probably the easiest. It's the easiest if the quadratic equation can be factored. Not every quadratic equation can be factored easily. But when they can be factored, it's actually kind of simple, as long as your factoring skills are okay. It all hinges on this idea, and we're going to keep bringing this idea up a lot. When we solve a quadratic equation by graphing its related function, we find what are called the zeros. That's where the function equals 0. That idea is going to be running throughout all of the solving that we're doing. We're always going to be setting our quadratic expression in the equation equal to 0. So we're going to move everything to one side and set it equal to 0. That both has a graph component, like I just said, but it also comes to this idea, which is the zero product property. And the zero product property it's really just what you get when you multiply by 0. When you multiply any number by 0, you get 0. So 17 times 0 equals 0. 93 times 0 equals 0. Negative 4,000 times 0 equals 0. But there's another part of it if I reverse it. If I know that the product is going to give me 0, but I don't know what I multiplied to get in this problem, I know that one of them, I can figure out that one of the numbers I multiply has to be 0. So to go backwards, the only way that I can multiply two numbers and get 0 is if one of them is 0. That's the only way that can happen, right? And the way that you can do it, I mean, for example, let's pretend that I know one of the numbers. So if I say I've got 3 times some number, and that equals 0. Well, the opposite of multiplying would be to divide, and if I divide by 3, that tells me that the other number has to be 0. So if I have A times B equals 0, if let's say it this way, if B is a number, and I say B can be anything except 0, if I divide by B, because you can't divide by 0, that tells me that A equals 0. Or the other way, if A times B equals 0, if I go, well, what if A is the number that's not 0? All right? So I can divide by that, and you're going to get basically the same thing. Then that means that B has to be 0. Then you say, well, okay, well, what happens if both of them are 0? Well, that's easy. 0 times 0 equals 0. And that sometimes will happen. So working backwards, this means that if I know I got two things that are being multiplied, and the answer is 0, then one of those things, or maybe both of them, but at least one of them has to be 0. How does that help? So these are quadratic equations, but they're in what we call factored form. Right? They don't look like the quadratic equations that we're going to be doing in the next example. This is already near the end of the problem that we're going to do in just a moment, okay? Or it might be a while, it depends on when you start the next video. Okay, in the next video. I have this, x subtract 3 times, these parentheses, they do grouping, but they also mean multiply. So x subtract 3 is being multiplied by x plus 7, and I know that when I multiply this times that, I get 0. So that tells me that either x subtract 3, I'm going to write it, x subtract 3 equals 0, or x plus 7 equals 0. One of those has to be 0. If neither one of them is 0, there's no way I can multiply them both and get 0. So, x subtract 3 equals 0. If that's the case, I'm going to solve this by adding 3, my marker will work, to both sides, and I get x equals 3. And if x plus 7 equals 0, I'm going to add negative 7 to both sides to isolate the x, and I get x equals negative 7. Alright, cool. Let's look at this one. I've got x multiplied by x subtract 5, and that product equals 0. So this tells me either x equals 0, which I don't have to do any work for that one, or x subtract 5 equals 0. And if that's the case, simply adding 5 to both sides is going to give me that x equals 5. I forgot to do something with this one, but I'll do it with this one, and I'll come back and do that. If x equals 0, I get 0 times 0 subtract 5. 0 subtract 5 is negative 5. 0 times negative 5 does equal 0, so that works. Right? I can check that. If I say 5, I get 5 times 5 subtract 0, which is just 5 times 0, which equals 0. So that one also works. And if I come back and do these two, I'm sorry, I forgot to do this. 3 subtract 3 is 0. 0 times 10 equals 0. And negative 7 subtract 3 is negative 10. Negative 7 plus 7 is 0. Negative 10 times 0 equals 0. So both these are going to check. All right, we'll do one more and then we'll pause the video, start the next one. X plus 4 times x subtract 3. So either x plus 4 equals 0 or x subtract 3 equals 0. And we use the word or. In English we use the word or a lot, but in math or means something very special. All right? So in this case, it's saying that this could happen, this could happen, at least one of them has to happen. So the word or, so it's like, I could have French fries or I could have chips if I order a sandwich at the deli, okay? So I'm going to get fries, that's okay. Somebody else says they want chips, that's okay. So that's where we use the word or in it. Later we'll talk about what the word and means, but right now don't worry about it. I can't resist. The word and means both of them have to be true. The word or means both of them could be true, but one of them at least has to be true. All right, let me keep working on this. So I'm going to add negative 4 to both sides. I'm going to get x equals negative 4. And I'm going to add positive 3 to both sides, and I'm going to get x equals positive 3. Negative 4 plus 4 equals 0. Doesn't matter what this is. It's going to be negative 7, but it doesn't matter. 0 times negative 7 equals 0. 3, this is going to be 7, but this is going to be 3 minus 3, which gives me 0. Okay. So I'll see you in the next video.